My name is Hannah Brooks. I was 29 years old, and for 3 years I taught fourth grade Monday through Friday, then spent my Saturday mornings tutoring students whose families could not afford private lessons. Every extra dollar went into one dream: a week in Italy. Not because I wanted luxury, because it would be the first time in my adult life that I had chosen something entirely for myself. My best friend, Mia, had saved right alongside me. 3 years of budgeting. 3 years of saying, maybe next year, whenever someone invited me out. Then, the morning of our flight finally arrived. We checked our bags, cleared security, and were sitting near our gate when my mother called. I smiled. I honestly thought she wanted to wish me a safe trip. Instead, she said, "Hannah, don't board that plane. Your sister's babysitter canceled an hour ago. You'll have to watch the kids." For a second, I laughed. I thought she was teasing me. Then my father took the phone. "Family comes first. Italy will still be there next year. Cancel the trip." I looked at my boarding pass, then at the passport I had waited years to use. I remembered every birthday dinner I skipped, every overtime shift I accepted, every little sacrifice that turned into this one ticket. Then I realized something that hurt even more. They were not asking me to help. They had already promised Ashley that I would stay, without speaking to me once. A few seconds later, my sister texted, "Thanks for doing this. I knew Mom would convince you." I stared at those words for a long time. Not because I was angry, because she genuinely believed there was never another possible answer. Then, the boarding announcement echoed through the terminal. Mia quietly picked up her backpack and looked at me. She didn't tell me what to do. She simply asked, "What do you want, Hannah?" Before I tell you what happened next, I want to know where you're watching from. Leave your country in the comments, and if you've ever been expected to sacrifice your plans because you were the responsible one, subscribe to Public Evidence. This story is for you. I stood up, looked one last time at my phone. Then I made the one decision my family never believed I would make. I started walking toward the boarding gate. The aircraft lifted off 23 minutes later. As the city disappeared beneath the clouds, I kept staring out the window. Part of me wondered if I had just made the biggest mistake of my life. The other part knew I had made the first decision that actually belonged to me. Mia didn't say much during the flight. She simply smiled, handed me a pair of headphones, and said, "You've spent 3 years earning this week. Try to enjoy the first hour of it." 7 hours later, we landed in Rome. The moment the plane reached the gate, I switched my phone back on. It vibrated so hard I thought something was wrong. 37 missed calls, 11 voicemails, 26 text messages. Most were from my parents, a few were from Ashley. The last message made my stomach tighten. "I can't believe you'd do this to your own family." Before I could reply, another message appeared. This one wasn't from anyone I knew. It was from my neighbor, Mrs. Collins. "Hannah, call me when you can. Your parents and Ashley have been at your apartment all afternoon." I frowned. Why would they go to my apartment? Then another voicemail finished downloading. It was my father. His voice no longer sounded angry. It sounded panicked. "Hannah, please call us back." Things didn't go the way we expected. I looked at Mia. She could tell from my face that something had changed. I stepped away from the crowd and called Mrs. Collins first. She answered immediately. "Hannah, thank goodness. Your family came looking for you after they realized you were already gone. Your sister thought you had left a spare key with me. When I told them I didn't have one." Everyone started arguing right there in the parking lot. I closed my eyes. For the first time, it finally hit them. There was no backup plan, because I had always been the backup plan. Mrs. Collins hesitated before saying one more thing. "Honey, I don't think this trip is what they're really upset about. I think they're upset because, for the first time, you didn't rescue them, and somehow, That sentence hurt even more than every missed call on my phone. I tried to enjoy Italy. I really did. The streets were beautiful. The food was incredible. Everywhere I looked, people were living the kind of moments I had imagined for 3 years. But every evening, I found myself wondering what was happening back home. On the third day of the trip, my phone rang again. This time, it was Ashley. For a moment, I considered letting it go to voicemail. Instead, I answered. She didn't waste a second. "Do you know how much trouble you've caused?" I stayed quiet. She continued before it her, confused. "Why?" She gently answered, "Because every time I look at that picture, I'm reminded that loving your family should never require giving up your own life." For a moment, none of us spoke. We didn't need to. Some lessons are too important for long speeches. As I drove home that night, I thought about the boarding gate where this story had begun. For years, I believed choosing myself meant I was letting my family down. Now I understood the truth. Healthy families don't expect one person to carry everyone else's responsibilities. They ask, they listen, and they respect the answer, even when it's no. That trip to Italy gave me beautiful memories, but the greatest thing I brought home wasn't a souvenir. It was a boundary, and somehow, that became the best gift I ever gave both myself and my family. Before you go, I'd love to hear from you. Have you ever been expected to put your own dreams on hold for someone else? Tell me what country you're watching from in the comments, and let me know what kind of story you'd like to hear next. If you enjoyed this story, subscribe to Public Evidence and turn on the bell icon so you never miss another original story. I could respond. Mom had already promised everyone you would keep the kids for the weekend. Mark couldn't get out of work. The backup sitter was out of town. We had reservations for a charity fundraiser months ago. We couldn't just cancel everything. I finally asked the question that had been sitting in my mind since the airport. "Ashley, did anyone ever ask me?" The line went silent. For several seconds, neither of us spoke. Then she answered quietly, "We didn't think we needed to." Those 7 words hurt more than any accusation. Not because she meant to be cruel, because she honestly believed my time belonged to the family first. After we hung up, I sat alone on a bench overlooking the Tiber River. Mia found me a few minutes later carrying 2 cups of coffee. She listened without interrupting. When I finished, she asked something no one in my family ever had. "Hannah, what would have happened if you had called me and asked me to cancel the most important weekend of my life?" I smiled sadly. "You probably would have said no." She nodded. "Exactly. Because friendship doesn't mean ownership. Neither does family." That sentence stayed with me for the rest of the trip. For years, I had mistaken being dependable for being available. They were never the same thing. The vacation eventually came to an end. As our flight home crossed the Atlantic, I knew one thing for certain. My family wasn't waiting at the airport to hear about Italy. They were waiting for an explanation. What they didn't know was that I finally had one ready. My flight landed just after 6 on a Sunday evening. As I walked through the terminal, I kept expecting another flood of messages. Instead, there was only one. From my mother. "Can we please talk?" Nothing else. No guilt, no demands, no explanations. When I reached my apartment building, 3 familiar cars were parked outside. My parents were there. Ashley and her husband were standing beside them. Even the kids had come. For a moment, none of us moved. It felt strange seeing everyone waiting for me instead of waiting for something from me. Ashley was the first to speak. She looked exhausted, not angry, just ashamed. "I owe you an apology." I nodded but stayed quiet. She took a slow breath. "When Mom told me you would watch the kids, I never questioned it." "I should have. I spent years assuming you would always rearrange your life for mine. I never stopped to ask what I was asking you to give up." Then my father stepped forward. His voice was softer than I had ever heard it. We kept telling ourselves we weren't taking advantage of you. We called it family helping family. The truth is, we stopped seeing your kindness as a gift. We started treating it like an obligation. My mother wiped away a tear before continuing. When you got on that plane, it wasn't the trip that hurt us. It was realizing we had built our lives around sacrifices we never had the right to expect. For years, every family emergency had ended with the same answer: Hannah will handle it. This time, there was no Hannah. And suddenly, everyone had to solve their own problem. I looked around at the people standing in front of me. For the first time, nobody was asking me to fix anything. Nobody was asking me to cancel my plans. Nobody was asking me to rescue them. My little nephew quietly walked over and slipped his hand into mine. Aunt Hannah, Mom says Italy was really pretty. Did you have fun? I smiled. It was such a small question, yet somehow it was the first time anyone in my family had asked how my experience had been. And in that moment, I realized our family wasn't beginning with forgiveness. It was beginning with something we had been missing for years: respect. Life slowly found a new rhythm after that evening. Nothing changed overnight. Family habits rarely do. But small changes have a way of revealing whether an apology is real. About 2 months later, my phone rang on a Friday afternoon. It was Ashley. I smiled before answering. Her first words surprised me. Hi, Hannah. Before I ask anything, are you free this weekend? I laughed softly. That one sentence meant more than she probably realized. For the first time in years, someone had asked instead of assumed. I told her I already had plans. There was no silence, no guilt, no disappointed sigh. She simply said, "No problem, maybe another time. Enjoy your weekend." After we hung up, I sat there smiling for several minutes, not because I had said no, because nobody tried to change my answer. A few weeks later, Mom invited everyone over for Sunday dinner. As we cleared the table, she handed me a small envelope. Inside was a photograph. It was the picture Mia had taken of me standing beside the Trevi Fountain in Rome. Mom looked at me and smiled. I asked Mia to send it to me. I wanted to keep it where I could see it every day. I looked at it